Now, the EU's chief negotiator, Michel Barnier, has been clear that the deal on the table is the best and only one possible. Let's cross over to our political editor now, Darren McCaffrey, who's in Brussels. Darren, Michel Barnier was firm when he addressed Parliament that there would be no more negotiations. Is this the EU's bottom line?
Well, it is, at least publicly, Totes, and that is unsurprising given the fact they have spent 18 months negotiating this deal. They have got the 27 other EU countries to sign up to it, and they also want to, it must be said, give Theresa May some political support. So, of course, they are publicly saying that this is the only and the best deal on the table. We wouldn't expect them to say anything less. Whether that's true in reality or not, well, we're just going to have to see, and I think that really depends on the sequence of events, and it may well not be up to Michel Barnier, the EU's chief Brexit negotiator. Ultimately, I think these negotiations are now somewhat out of his hands, because if we're working on the assumption, as seems to be the perceived assumption at least at Westminster, that this is going to be very difficult for Theresa May to get that deal through the Westminster Parliament on December 11th, well, in that situation, she is then, if she remains as Prime Minister, likely in a matter of days after that vote to come here to Brussels for a scheduled EU Council meeting. Now, the room for thought is, if Britain is then hurtling towards a no-deal scenario, something that both London and Brussels suggest they don't want, then that the European Union may well have to step in, or at least open itself up to further negotiations, to potentially further concessions, that in a second vote, which may well follow a week later, that they may give enough ground to get enough particularly Conservative MPs over the line. So it all depends on sequencing. It all depends, of course, on the politics of this Totes, but at the moment, the EU are very publicly and very firmly saying this is the best deal.
Darren, what are EU leaders looking for in the run-up to next week's vote in Westminster?
I think they're looking for what happens at Westminster, really, and whether Theresa May can win over MPs. As Damien was suggesting, she has been on this whistle-stop tour of Britain. That is likely to carry on over the next couple of weeks to try and go over the heads of MPs, to try and convince members of the British public that this is a good deal. It's going to climax in just over a week's time. We've just learned in the last few minutes that there is going to be a TV debate between Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour opposition leader, and Theresa May. But it is not going to be the British public who make this final decision. It is going to be members of Parliament at Westminster. We all know that Labour, the Scottish Nationalists, the Liberal Democrats are opposed to this deal, and so are nearly 100 of her own MPs. Can she convince them in the next 10 days or so to back her deal? Well, that is her mission. It's a really difficult task. And looking at that committee meeting this morning, many still are not convinced that this is the best deal, that this is a deal that can convince them to back her. And in those circumstances, well, you know what? If we've learned anything in politics, Totes, in the last couple of years, we really are into unpredictable territory.